Talk about gerbs.
Yeah, the gerbs we have.
How we got them.
How we got them.
Yeah, it's an endeavor becoming an adult and getting a jorb. So we thought we'd shed some light on how we got ours.
Good jorb, Devin.
And we're not gonna call it anything else in this video except a jorb.
Jorb job. That's what you call it. You get an upgraded job. You get a jorb job. Kristen and Freddie did a video where they talked about how they got hired at BuzzFeed, and people were commenting they wanted to know more. And so yeah, Devin and I decided to take up that mantle and talk to you a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think that people are interested in general in how we got our jobs in BuzzFeed because these jobs didn't exist 10 years ago.
That's true, that is true.
So people want to know, like, A, how did you do this? And B, how can I do this? Jen.
Oh, me, okay.
How did you get your jorb at BuzzFeed?
When I was in school, I did film studies basically, and with the emphasis on like production and writing. So I entered the workforce applying for jobs that were like pretty typical for entry-level entertainment industry. So I was applying for assistant gigs, I was applying for PA gigs. And when I'd been in college, I'd been lucky enough to be able to get some internships at production companies. So I had done a few internships that had me specifically working on set, where I would be working camera or doing a little bit of editing. And then I'd also had an internship where I was doing development intern work and casting department intern work. So I was doing a lot of office administrative stuff and then a mix of some on-set production work. So I felt like I had like a fairly well-rounded resume by the time I graduated college. And I did know that BuzzFeed had an array of internships. And thankfully I had a good friend from high school who already worked at BuzzFeed. And she was always encouraging me to apply. She was like, you would like it, like it's really cool. You should apply for the BuzzFeed internship. They have a thing called the video internship. They want people that have production skills, and they also want people that are creatively minded and really enjoy coming up with ideas. So it checked a lot of boxes for me, basically this internship. I applied, I wrote a cover letter, I sent them some example video I had made, and I didn't hear back for like 6 weeks, and I thought that it wasn't gonna work out, so I got a job at a ramen shop very briefly. Shout out to them. I got hired at that ramen shop, and then like 2 days before I was supposed to work my first shift, I got an email from HR at BuzzFeed being like, hey, we'd love you to come in for an interview. And yeah, I set up the interview, and I was actually interviewed and then hired by Ned Fulmer of the Try Guys.
Of the Try Guy fan.
Ned did hire me. And then my first week on the internship, I was assigned to a Try Guy shoot, and it was the Try Guys BDSM shoot. And
you saw some peen. You saw some Try Guy peen.
I saw some Try Guy balls. But basically, like a week, like literally like after getting hired by Ned, my first week on the job, I saw his butt. And it was like a weird transition. He was very nice. He was actually, Ned was my first boss at BuzzFeed. So for me, my first like few months at BuzzFeed were very much focused on my skills on set. I was usually running camera, I was running sound, I was assisting the art department. I was also like going on a bunch of prop runs, which is like a very common thing for like the entry-level person to do on set. But yeah, I was originally hired as a video intern, and then I turned into a video fellow, which you also did, where you are basically a junior producer, and you're making videos full time. When it comes to like how I got my job, I do feel very grateful because I think I benefited from some luck. I mean, people always say that like success is like when preparation meets opportunity, and that's what I felt like happened with me. Because I did work really hard, but I also did get a little bit of help. Like I wouldn't want to tell this story without acknowledging that I did get help, and that was like a privilege that I had. And like I didn't get that help because I like deserved it more than anybody else. So it's sort of one of those things where it's like, okay, like that's how I got here. That's the thing, it instills a sense of like you have to pay it forward in some way. So my story of how I got my job is like, you gotta work hard, you gotta take advantage of the people that can help you if they can, and then if you do get help, like you should be very aware of like the ways in which you can like bring other people up with you eventually.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like what people respond to too is the sense of, what if I don't know anybody?
True.
Like, right? Because like, what if you're going into an industry that's like maybe not friendly to people, or maybe you're like at a disadvantage for like a lot of different reasons. How do you get your foot in the door?
Well, I say, because my story kind of leads to that, you have to be creative. Because I didn't know anyone at BuzzFeed when I got this job. I majored in acting in college. I got my BFA in acting, and I got my BA in English. And my intention was to come out, graduate to school, and move to New York or Chicago and act and be a stage actress. Be an actress for the theater. I wanted to be an actor for the theatre. But I was in a show called Harry Potter Musical, which everyone knows about and comments about, which is very nice. Thank you so much. And thankfully we had an agent in LA at the time. So I decided to move to LA and do the acting thing. And I ended up hating it. When I first moved out here, my agent told me to lose 30 pounds. She told me to dye my hair black because back then Zooey Deschanel was really big. And so she said that my type was Zooey Deschanel. This was before kind of this conversation we're having about inclusivity and Me Too movement. And so everything you've heard about the acting industry at that time, it's pretty much true. Yeah. Like I would say I would walk into a casting and people would tell me to put on more makeup or put on less makeup, or like, I won't, thank you for auditioning, but you won't get this role because you're not the right size. Just stuff like that. That was pretty normal. But honestly, that really wasn't why I hopped out of acting for a bit. It's more, I just hated the lack of control because I was constantly like, it was like, hurry up and wait. So I was like constantly putting all of my efforts and energy into an audition, and then I would wait and hear nothing. And it was just kind of devastating. Like it was like mini devastations all the time. Yeah. So I decided to do some kind of like freelance producing work since I've produced some things before in college. I liked organizing shoots and everything like that. So I did that. Cool. And on top of that, I was like supplementing my income teaching pole dancing because I had been doing that since I graduated. So I was in a bar in Lower Manhattan complaining to my friend one night, and this guy came up to our table and was like, hey, sorry to bother you. I just want to hear more about your background and like what you're about. And he sat down with us and we just started chatting, and he wasn't trying to like hit on me or anything. He just was really keeping it business and shop talk. And he's like, the reason why I ask is I'm a recruiter for BuzzFeed.
Oh, cool.
And I just want to hear about like, we're looking for video producers. And at that time, it was like potentially in New York. So he's like, okay, well give me a call when you come back to LA. So then I came back to LA and I reached out, and he wasn't actually working at the company anymore when I reached out. So I was like, well, cool. So I kind of got a big fat no. So then I was like, well, I want to try this again. And if I really want something, I make an infographic. So I made my cover letter into an infographic. You know, a cover letter is typically a letter that says like, Dear Mr. and Mrs. BuzzFeed, please hire me. I love your company, blah, blah, blah.
I'm Mrs. BuzzFeed.
Dear Mrs. BuzzFeed.
Hi.
And so when I got back into LA, they had noticed that my cover letter was like sticking out like a sore thumb. And so then they called me in. I interviewed Ned and he hired me. And I started as an intern as well, which at the time, because I was already freelancing in development, was a step down for me in my career. Yeah. I was making less money at BuzzFeed. It was definitely just like work in the mailroom again, which I had already done for years. Yeah. And so that was a pivotal moment in my life where I had to kind of put my ego in the back seat, because there was a part of me that was like, you've worked as an intern before, you've done PA work, like you shouldn't have to, like you should get a fellow position.
Yeah, like I feel like there's like a thing for a lot of people at BuzzFeed where it's like, there are quite a few of us who this was, myself included, this was your first job outside of college. And then there are a lot of people who've worked at a bunch of different places as well and are sort of like coming in with like a very different perspective. That's always been an interesting conversation, is like how people feel about this job, I think has a lot to do with what they were doing before, and if it was anything.
Yeah, and so I took a pay cut. I had to gamble. Starting January 2016, I started being a fellow for Ladylike. And then I've been here ever since. And I was our first fellow.
Yeah, we didn't have one.
At the time, we had benchmarks. If you considered the video a success, it had to hit a certain number amount, and we'd call that a button. And then if it hit like an even bigger benchmark, you actually got a hoodie. And it was like a big deal, and that's kind of how they based the fellowship, at least, because the fellowship is all about, can you prove to BuzzFeed that you can be a video producer? Yeah. I remember the night I like sat in the mirror, and I looked at myself, I was like, Devin, you have to be undeniable. Your numbers have to be so good that they can't not give you the job. Yeah. And so then that's what I did. One of the most popular videos I made was a video where we tried to walk cats. That's where I really, immersed myself in cat content. Became the queen that I am in cat content, and that actually hoodied.
I mean, I think for me, like, advice I can give to people is like, don't be discouraged if you aren't gonna go to film school or aren't gonna do something like that. Like truthfully, really what helps is just like, if you're a creative person and you like to make stuff, that's gonna be like probably one of your biggest door openers. Cause like you guys were college students and you made that musical. And as long as you like work hard on it and are proud of it, like you're going to learn something from it. And like, there's no wasted time if you worked hard.
Right, and also I think that a lot of times, especially for an art industry, you have to get exposure to sets to really know what it's like. So if you're truly interested in this line of work, see if you can like just be a coffee boy or girl on a set, just so you can see how it works.
Yeah.
Because there is a general like assembly line and how feeling when you walk on set.
Yeah. I mean, there's no shame in whatever job you have to do to get where you need to go.
No.
Some of my college jobs, I clean off walls. That's a story, it's true. So I don't know. I mean, there's no job that isn't worth doing. And like, don't be embarrassed by having to do a job where you're like, I'm just a coffee boy. Cause it's like, everybody's gotten coffee.
But you clean.
Yeah. Well, the moral of the story is if you ever have to deal with poop early on in your career, you will probably end up at BuzzFeed and be like, hey, in comparison, this is great.
Better than poop.
Just kidding, it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun here.
No, it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, I am grateful that I'm here and I appreciate all the people I work with every day.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, Unsolved is on a new channel, and now you're part.
Subscribe here. That was my part.